Thanks for listening to the Inspiring Men podcast. I'm Dean Dampney. Head over to naturemind.com.au to check out the Men's Mind, Body and Heart program for a 12-week online transformation course for men. It's the Inspiring Men podcast, which is a conversation between the two of us. You're the inspiring man.
Okay, I'll try.
I'm one of the rest of the male population that are looking to get inspired. Whether you're inspiring or not, doesn't matter, no pressure. You will be. But hey, Breno, as you know, man, my day-to-day is not only working with men, but the majority of people I'm working with are men. And they represent an even bigger situation where I feel that men are a little bit lost, generally speaking. And I know that you speak to this to your students with respect to the various cultural and political and international issues that you teach at university. I find that men have been culturally misguided to work harder than ever, to be more disconnected from family, from themselves, so on and so forth. I won't go down that track too far, but I feel like men are generally lost, and that the reason we're doing this podcast is I'm hoping that we can actually make a difference for men, to be able to guide them in some way. And the reason that you're super inspiring to me, and I know that this works both ways, but one of the things that I'm always drawing inspiration from you with is this passion for life, this energy that you bring into every moment that I share with you, into what I assume is most likely the majority of the time, if not every day, for this zest and spirit of how good is this. And you and I have got that catch cry, with the spirit we go, and that's just so inspirational. How's this for a broad question, man? You ready for it? This is my first. How do you do it? What's the secret?
Well, first I'm going to say thank you for those kind words, Dino. And obviously I feel the same. I feel the same with all of our exchanges, of course. And look, it's something I definitely have become aware of. I haven't always been aware of it, but I've been aware of bringing positivity into every moment of the day. And I find that, I think looking back now, nearly 55, I've tried to make a habit of being positive, even when, I'll put in inverted commas, the realists tell me that I'm not being realistic. But I feel like life is all about hope. And if you can have some measure of hope about the next moment, the next surf, the next time you go out, the next band you see, the next meal you eat, and most importantly, the next person you run into, I feel that it builds its own momentum. So, it sounds a bit corny, but being positive is a habit, and just the same way as being negative is a habit. And so you just keep the habit going.
Oh man, okay, this is so good already. Speaking of people, who's the next person going to be? This place that we're at is Lake Tabourie, which is both of our backyards, a bit closer to my front door than Brendan's, but regardless, we're on the south coast of New South Wales. Anyone might arrive here any moment. That's part of the beauty of the unknown. And we tend to have maybe trepidation about what's not around the corner, negativity perhaps, and these are habitual tendencies that are collective, that we do have fear around not knowing what's next. We end up, this is my take on things, we do end up ruminating and mindlessly just trying to find a solution to this fear that we've got, that maybe things aren't going to turn out so well. It's a shitty habit to have, and so many of us are in the habit of that, generally speaking. So how do we turn that negative habitualization into a positive? How do we generate positivity instead of negativity as a habit? Breaking it down.
Well, I don't know what exact techniques there are, but I'll tell you, I just had an experience when we got out of the surf here about half an hour ago. And because I mean, I'm just like everyone else. My mind is traveling forward, it's traveling back, worrying about this and that to varying degrees. And I feel like, and that's something that I haven't got completely.
Me too.
That's something that everyone hasn't got completely mastered, I think.
Yeah.
But and then I had a moment of just looking where I was here at Tabari and thought, God, this place is so beautiful. Why am I worried about what's going to happen in the lecture on Friday? Or why am I worried about that meeting I'm trying to line up with someone? You know, like just right now is the time to rejoice. That was my relieving moment half an hour ago, which I feel like is worth relaying. But to answer your question about how do you practice positivity and try and move away from negativity, and one thing you can do for starters is surround yourself, or spend as much time as you can with people whom you know are positive.
Absolutely.
And I think that that energy exchange is well, actually, now I think about it, because I asked this question, I've never actually thought about it before.
That's the beauty of this. I advocate for open contemplation. I advocate for relational, collective open contemplation. That's my number one thing, really, for wisdom.
Well, look, just a tiny little bit of background. Like, one of my parents was extremely negative, and like that was just her pattern. That was her pattern. It was my mum's pattern. And so I feel like I was raised in that environment to be the opposite, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I'd say that you actually consciously chose to take the opposite path. Maybe not completely consciously, but yeah, there was a point where little Brendan would have gone, I don't like that. I don't want to energetically become that. And maybe it wasn't conscious, but it would have been easier unconsciously to adopt your mother's way, which is what I feel habitually is what happens so often, that we adopt, both the negative and positive traits of our internal family systems, but not consciously. So we don't realize that, we're that person as well. But was it conscious, do you think? Maybe not. I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Definitely not initially, because I had to shed those negative patterns as well, because you develop them yourself as the child.
Did you recognize that you had that negative pattern?
Well, most definitely. It took some time, and I was just thinking. I was just thinking about a comment I made to someone 32 years ago that was very negative, and it was about someone who I now regard as a really great friend. It was totally unnecessary, unthinking. It was automatic. It was reflexive.
Yeah,
that's the pattern of behaviour I was in at the time. I didn't mean anything by it, but like a sort of hurtful throwaway line, or whatever it is.
Yeah,
was just a habit that I'd got into, and before I forget, actually, so obviously it takes a while. But getting back to your question, how do you bring positivity into your life? Okay, so you've got the positive, positive people around you, and you look to spend as much time as you can with those people. But also too, we're always going to attract negativity. We're always going to attract negative people as well, to one degree or another.
For sure. And look, light does attract shadow. That's at least a cliche that I'd find to be resonant in certain circumstances, personally at least. The brightest lights, are the people that we want to be closer to. I guess it's almost like independent as to whether or not you're a bright light or someone lurking in the shadows. We all want to get towards the light.
Well, here's my ironclad.
I'm just mindful of this circle. It's not going to pick up and hit you in the back of the head. That would be a really interesting sign. Okay,
I feel like it looks
with the
too
direction,
heavy.
It's not going to quite get to you.
Okay. But if it does, I'll just yell out and I'll do that.
I'm actually going to put it to the side just for the sake of not having any catastrophes mid-podcast.
That would be the next video I've been on this year go viral. But we'll talk about
that. I'm not going to let go of that one then.
But okay. So when you first said, like, how do you do it? How do you make this happen?
Yeah.
Instantly, I didn't have an answer, but now I've had time for that answer just to come forth. And so being with positive people, yes. Secondly, too, obviously we have people making negative comments around us all the time, and people inviting us in to that negative pattern of thought. And I'm not necessarily doing it deliberately. It's just a way of behaving. And so I found that at some point in my life, I don't know when it was exactly, as much as possible, not engage with negative talk about anyone. So the first is you don't say it, but also you don't respond to other people's negative inquiries, questions, comments, whatever, judgments, and so on. And I've found the greatest communication tool in that area is silence. Not rude silence, just silence, and just let it sit. And that gives a moment. That's a teaching moment for the person speaking it. And trust me, I'm not immune to making negative comments. It still can happen.
You have a relatively high degree of immunity. I'd suggest developed immunity, Breno.
Thanks.
Beautiful.
So that's that's something that I've practiced.
Jinx. And to the point of expertise, it's so nice, man. It's great. It's like we've all got our own messages, and we all arrive at like whatever our message may be. And obviously we've got tons of messages or tons of things that we hold close to our hearts as things that we value. That's an amazing value, to be able to wave that flag and go, this is who I am.
Well, it's a form of self-defense as well.
Yeah.
Because negative talk creates negative energy.
Yeah.
Negative energy makes you feel bad.
Yeah. We're all striving to be happy and peaceful, or whatever we want to classify those goals as being.
Yeah.
So, philosophically, the discussion about whether we're doing it for the sake of protecting ourselves or giving ourselves the best opportunity for peacefulness or happiness. Look, it's irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. I feel like we're all aiming towards that, and some of us have realised that it involves others, and how we interconnect with those people contributes to that equation, again, for a bigger discussion. But yeah, that's awesome, man. And it's funny, like when I woke up this morning, we both woke up here on this what's now incredibly bright, beautiful, blue sky, sunny day. But this morning it was grey and overcast, and I woke up and tried to be present with what I felt into the experience of this new day in my assessment as to where I was at and how it felt into, or how this bigger picture, how the sense of this day felt beyond me. And it was grey, but it was light grey. And it was, for me, in my experience, and it was also really still. And the reason I'm telling this little anecdote is that it didn't have to be sunny with rainbows and unicorns. It felt just beautiful to be in this light grey stillness. And the reason I'm saying that is that when you reply with the non-reply, when you reply with the quiet, what did you say, silence to someone's perceived negativity, it's stillness. The silence is stillness, and that is such a great combatant to anything that is the opposite. It's this rustling, I guess aggressive, or whichever way you want to frame it. Negativity isn't still. It's coming from a place of dynamic, sense of action, an action that needs to make something known, and often it's the unconscious that's trying to become known in those circumstances. It helps me a little bit. Coming full circle, man, 32 years ago, when you're having that conversation, or when you found yourself being maybe an emanation of your upbringing through your mum's influence, was it at that point that you consciously went, I've become, or I'm acting out in that way that I don't like, I'm going to choose not to be that anymore?
No, it took years.
Okay.
It took years.
But it was a marker of a time that you didn't really like about the way that you acted? Is that...
Look, I think I'd already begun the move,
I'm
what I
sure.
call my own personal movement
Yeah,
in
speaking
this
of
positive direction. I'd
dynamic.
already begun it, but it is a process. And I think too, um, here's the thing too. I reckon, we're thinking about men and also boys. The part of that particular comment that I made at that time, part of what was connected in there is that guy was more successful at me at being
Whatever.
this great person, rock and roll star, whatever. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? That was, and so, I, and so it was just so, it was so stupid and unnecessary. I'm not even saying it. I'm not even saying it to him. I'm saying it to my partner at the time. I can't even remember exactly who it was. But I haven't. I look back on these times where I realised it was a non-thinking, automatic, habitual response.
Yeah.
I actually didn't really feel that. But the thing that I'm thinking about is also too in Australia, it's cultural,
Yes.
and the tall poppy syndrome lives and breathes, and that was part of what that was definitely part of what was coming out in that comment there. That person is more successful
Yeah.
than I at something I want to be successful at.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting, man. Can I say exactly why? What were we talking about before? We're talking about just how we're talking about serendip. What I framed in my mind as serendipity, and how if we allow things, I think I might have said, it's incredible the gifts that continue just unfolding or presenting themselves in this life experience that we get to be in. And yeah, this is a psychotherapist, and you're being psychoanalyzed constantly. By the way, just to take the heat off the moment, because it's a constant process, and this is how I work with my own thoughts, and with everyone in my life. It doesn't matter if they're clients or friends or people that I come into contact with. When I hear someone speak of having developed an understanding of tall poppy syndrome in a pronounced enough way that it's a marked theme of the life, at least on one occasion. And now knowing that professionally, one of the professional hats that you wear is someone that lectures in Australian cultural studies. Did I coin that at university level?
Yep.
Nonetheless. Did I just frame that? Did I just
No,
coin
that's
that?
exactly right. Yep.
So
Yep.
the reason I'm drawing a little bit more light to that is that we do find ourselves investigating the things that are troublesome or incongruent with our soul's journey, for want of a better term, throughout our life. It's usually just not so conscious. Usually we don't actually understand that that's why things continue to unfold in these patterns, habitualizations, until we actually go, I've put two and two together. I've arrived here because that was marked in my early life as something that I wasn't quite sitting right with. How can I change this? So anyway, that's just something I wanted to say out loud, that you've become an expert in dismantling the culture of negativity, or of tall poppy syndrome. Maybe explain what tall poppy syndrome is, because this is for Australian men, man. Like, primarily it's Aussies that are going to be listening to this.
Okay, so tall poppy syndrome is an it may be worldwide, but it's definitely an Australian cultural trait where we tend to chop down at the knees someone who is successful at something, and we see it with, I would say, any boy who's been to an Australian public high school has experienced this.
Absolutely.
They do well in an assessment task or whatever, and they get whatever, jeered for it, teased about, whatever. The boys doing it don't even really probably mean it.
Yeah.
And I've experienced it as a teenager and observed it as a teacher, and so it's basically anyone who's more successful than us, we say something to bring them down, okay, which is essentially a negative comment, and that creates negative energy, and then so obviously the picture, the more you do that, the worse you feel.
Yeah, and the more of a collective cultural issue it becomes.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is the thing and something else that I just thought of, because I'm going to every time I'm going to keep trying to loop back to your very first question because I didn't
You
have
do.
an answer for it immediately, but now
You're
I'm getting
looping beautifully. We're looping together, man.
I'm getting point three. Like, then the broad question was, how do you do it? Of course,
Yeah.
like, giving energy to every moment that you have with someone. So now, of course, you to be able to do that, you need to be able to feel good. You need to have that energy to
Yeah.
give, and so you need to engage in maybe I was just fortunate and born with the energy. Maybe that's definitely possible.
Sure.
But also to have times where I don't have energy and
Yeah.
I'm not as giving. I can try.
It's
but
relative.
Yeah. But
And you
so
do try.
I'd like to think so. But to have energy, you've got to do a life live a life that gives you energy.
Absolutely.
So doing stuff you love.
And also following that logic before, which makes so much bloody sense to me, is energetically aligning yourself to positive people as part of this life experience of being immersed in positivity, doing the things you love.
And also and then as we go on this journey of life, you learn about things that you do or may habitually do that actually don't fill you with energy, that actually drain you of energy. And it's interesting too, and I'll just mention that the tall poppy syndrome is something that I was actually just teaching last week.
Yeah.
And also to all of these characteristics of the Australian male that were written about, and we've sort of all had to try and live up to them in some ways, like hardworking but not too hardworking.
Yeah.
Like the the drinking culture in Australia, the gambling culture in Australia. The list is quite large, and we've, as boys, as men, we've obviously the hyper masculine environment, all of that.
Yeah.
We've absorbed this through popular culture.
Oh man,
since
I'm also
birth.
the only one that I really want to say out loud. I can't even think of the right word for it, but just the suck it up mentality. If you got some shit going on, you don't express that vulnerably. You don't say that out loud. Basically, that's a sign of weakness in the Australian culture, in the way that I feel into it. So yeah, we're not only feeling all these things and doing all these things that are working against us, but we're not able to communicate it either as Australian men, culturally, imbued in all of that.
Absolutely right. And now I'll come to. I love numbering things, right?
Is it 3 or is it 4?
We're up to 4 now.
I thought so.
And I'm only just relaying my personal experience. I'm certainly not trying to be the oracle. But
This may become an extension of the curriculum up at Wollongong Uni.
But I want to get back to your point, and this is because this is something that I've lived, and I'm sure you've lived, and everyone has lived. The cultural patterns in Australia, and it's always been there. Oh, he's a hard worker. Work hard.
Yeah.
And there's this work culture now in many occupations that expects you to work more than 35 hours a week or whatever, more, which I still think is. If you're not enjoying that job, it's far too many anyway.
Yeah, I'm so glad we're arriving at this point, by the way, because it was really the only other thing that I really want to draw attention to. So this is great.
Yeah, good. So I think, look, obviously we all have to work at some point or another.
Yeah.
And work is great because it creates connections with other people.
Yeah. Sense of fulfillment.
Teaches you new things. Teaches you self-discipline. We all need to learn a bit of that. I think that's something I'm still definitely trying hard with. But something I've been really certain about in my life is that if I'm just doing a job just for the money, or because there could be a lot of other reasons, then if I'm spending more than 5 days a week doing that, that's far too many. If I'm not enjoying it, it took me a long while to find a job I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
And so I've said no to full-time work most of my life.
Yeah.
Most of my working life. And I used to think it was a weakness. Going back to the thing, you're weak, you need to suck it up.
Oh man. Just really quickly.
Yeah.
I had a full-time job for it was it was actually my second full-time job ever. So, you know my history pretty well. This was in the era of my first trimester of my professional life, back in my 20s, post-university. I'd spent a year in the States working as a software engineer, came back to Australia after a year off, pretty healthy year off, traveling, to another position, full-time, working as a computer programmer, as a software engineer in the city. And it was killing me. Literally, day in, day out, it was just killing me. And I got to the point where courageously I posted up to my boss. We were a team of 4, 3 programmers, 1 boss guy, all working together, Commonwealth Bank, Martin Place, everything, skinny leather tie. Anyway, I had the courage to actually say to my boss, I feel like I can't do the 5-day week. It's something I literally don't know if I can physically and mentally sustain. And he said to me, oh, you're one of those guys, aren't you? And he was the loveliest guy ever, but the nature of that reply was so pessimistic. He literally just boxed me into a category of people that wasn't worthy in that single reply. And it was really tricky. I actually made a real, I guess, concerted effort to not be one of those guys for the next couple of years or next year and a half, and failed miserably, thankfully, which brought you and I basically into being on the South Coast together around that era. For me, it was, for both of us, late 20s, pretty much, after having quit my last position and attempt in the so-called real world.
Yeah, because we're trained to conform to these real world expectations, but they don't work for everyone, and maybe they don't work for most people, but some people just guts it out anyway. But it's and the thing I find really funny is that, yes, I'm definitely one of those guys, and the weirdest coincidence ever is that I have a feeling we had this discussion once before. I also was working in the IT industry for the Commonwealth Bank at 48 Martin Place, and at some point I said, and this is the full-time job I had for a year, and I said, I think I need to go to 4 days a week, and they were actually really supportive.
Great.
They were really supportive. That was great. So I'd spend 4 days in East Sydney, and then come down to the South Coast for 3 days, and that 4-3 split was good at the time. It was certainly better than 5-2 or whatever else. 5-2 wouldn't have been doable.
I went to 3-4, which was 3 days working, 4 days off, and actually the funny thing is it was too much time off because it became really, really hard to re-engage into that 3 days of professional work. So it threw my balance too far the other way.
Yes.
Since I've basically professionally tried to practice becoming better in that equation, and I'm actually really comfortable working, basically a relatively small amount of time. But having said that, my work and play are completely interconnected and one and the same.
This is so important. So, again, it's not just about work per se, but it's about work you're not enjoying.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Putting limits on that.
Thank you for mentioning
and
that.
if you enjoy it, I remember someone used to teach me that at Wollongong Uni more than 10 years ago. She said, my aim is to not have this line drawn between my work life and my non-work life. I want my life just to be my life and enjoy my work as much as that, which is great. And that's a different journey as well. And if you find that place, that's amazing. And and this is point number 5.
Oh no, these are great. I'm with every one of them. Do you remember what point 1 and 2 are, by the way?
Be with positive people.
Yeah.
And say nothing when someone says something negative around you.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And then creating positive experiences.
3 and 4, I'm going to have to backtrack again, but
I feel positive about it.
Yeah. Oh, 4 was about work, and putting limits on that, and maybe 3 was just doing things that you love. As many things to build that positive energy.
As men, we love lists. As all of us, we love lists. We love bang, 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 bang.
Me too.
It's great.
Me too. Now I've already forgot what number 5 was.
Oh, I know. I just interrupted you so much. And this is also about letting go. Oh man, here we can sit and breathe in absolute silence for a long time. I've done this before. It's really fun. People who are watching just say, "Oh shit, we're like 3 minutes in and they still haven't said anything." You're gonna get there.
Yeah. It was about...
Can we just say we came from the comment that was a lecturer that said about the definition?
Oh yeah,
between work
having
and
no
play?
difference. Yeah. Okay, yep, I'm back. I've got 5. All right. Okay, so this friend of mine at Wollongong Uni says, okay, so I want to reach this point in my life. We're at the same sort of stage. I'd loosely call it a career at that stage, but we're not career academics by any stretch at that stage. We're both working together on PhDs with a scholarship, which meant we had 3.5 years to do something that would help us do more of that in the future, if that's the path we wanted to follow.
Yeah, I didn't realise it's 3.5 years. Awesome.
Scholarship is usually 3. I mean, you can stretch a PhD out for 10.
I didn't know that.
But as my supervisor said, this is great advice. Just got to finish it. It's pass or fail. No one's ever failed. The thing with PhDs is that people don't actually finish them because for a whole lot of other reasons. But I'll get back to number 5 beforehand. The other thing about, so we're talking about, not having this line of separation between work and non-work. So obviously, non-work, good, work, no good, whatever. And so she had this idea of, I think the word is delineate.
Yeah.
Delineate, hard to say, easy to read. Move that line.
Yeah.
And so you think to yourself, okay, I know, I remember thinking this to myself, okay, so I've got to find something. Oh, I've always thought this anyway. You've got to find something what is it that you want to do?
The Inspiring Men podcast is conversations with me, Dean Dampney, alongside inspiring men, showing us how they've become everything they can be and showing you everything that you can be as a man that you are.